The marketplace on Kepler Station buzzed with the usual chaos of interstellar trade. Merchants from dozens of worlds hawked their goods under the artificial suns that lit the massive space station. The air smelled of exotic spices, ozone from plasma welders, and the recycled atmosphere that kept 30,000 beings alive in the void between stars. Maya Chen pressed through the crowd, her datapad clutched tightly as she checked items off her supply list. At 16, she was the youngest procurement officer in the history of the Terran scientific expedition. But her eye for quality and her talent for negotiating had earned her the respect of the entire crew. Today she was shopping for biological specimens for the xenobiology lab. That's when she heard the commotion near the livestock section. "Get that thing away from my stall," shouted a Corvani trader, his forearms waving frantically. "It's diseased. It's dying. It'll contaminate my entire inventory." Maya pushed closer to see what was causing the disturbance. In a corner of the marketplace, huddled against a shipping container, was the most pitiful creature she had ever seen. It was roughly the size of a large dog, but its body was covered in what looked like metallic scales that had lost their shine. Its 6 legs were thin and trembling, and patches of its hide showed raw, angry wounds. Most disturbing of all were its eyes, large, intelligent, and filled with a sadness that made Maya's chest tighten. "What is it?" she asked a nearby Zephyrian merchant. The blue-skinned alien made a dismissive gesture with his tentacles. "Quellan beast. Used to be valuable for their strength and loyalty, but this one's been sick for weeks. Owner tried to sell it at every port from here to the Andromeda Gate. Nobody wants it." Maya watched as another trader threw a piece of rotting fruit at the creature. It flinched but didn't move away, as if it had given up hope of finding shelter elsewhere. The action made Maya's anger flare, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Where's the owner now?" she asked. "Gave up 3 days ago. Left it here and took passage on a freight hauler. Station security keeps saying they'll dispose of it, but..." The Zephyrian shrugged. "Nobody wants to get close enough. Those things have claws that can tear through hull plating when they're healthy. Who knows what a sick one might do?" Maya approached the creature slowly, ignoring the protest from nearby vendors. As she got closer, she could see that the patches on its hide weren't wounds at all. They were new scales growing in, a brighter silver than the old ones. The creature's breathing was labored but steady. When it noticed her approach, it lifted its head with obvious effort. Their eyes met, and Maya felt something shift in her chest. The creature's gaze wasn't the dull stare of a dying animal. It was alert, aware, and desperately hopeful. "Hey there," she said softly, crouching down but staying just out of reach. "You're not looking so good, are you?" The creature made a sound that was part whimper, part purr. It was clearly trying to communicate, but Maya had never heard anything like it before. She pulled out her universal translator, but the device just beeped uncertainly. "No linguistic pattern match," it announced in its tinny voice. "That's okay," Maya told the creature. "We'll figure it out." She stood up and pulled out her communicator. "Dr. Voss? It's Maya. I'm in the marketplace and I found something interesting." Dr. Elizabeth Voss, the expedition's chief xenobiologist, answered immediately. "Please tell me you haven't bought another bargain specimen without consulting me first." "I haven't bought anything yet. But there's a Quellan here that I think we should look at." Quellans are notoriously difficult to study. They don't adapt well to laboratory conditions and they're expensive to maintain. This one's different. I think it's sick, but... Maya paused, studying the creature again. Something about the way it held itself, the intelligence in its eyes, the pattern of its scale regrowth. It all suggested something more complex than simple illness. "I think we should give it a chance." There was a long pause on the other end of the communicator. Dr. Voss had learned to trust Maya's instincts over the past year. The girl had an uncanny ability to spot potential in specimens that others overlooked. "What's your assessment?" Dr. Voss asked finally. Maya looked at the creature again. It was watching her with what seemed like understanding, as if it knew its fate hung in the balance of this conversation. "I think everyone's wrong about what's happening to it. I don't think it's dying. I think it's changing. Changing how? I'm not sure yet, but I'd like to find out." Another pause. "What are they asking for it?" Maya turned to the Zephyrian merchant, who had been listening to her conversation with obvious interest. "What would it cost to take the Quellan off your hands?" The alien's tentacles writhed in what Maya had learned was the equivalent of a shrug. "Station security wants it gone. Anyone willing to take responsibility for it can have it for the cost of transport permits. Say 50 credits? 50 credits was less than Maya usually spent on a single meal for the research specimens. It was almost insulting if the creature hadn't been so obviously in need of help. "Dr. Voss," Maya said into her communicator, "it's 50 credits. 50 credits for a Quellen? Either it's dead or it's the deal of the century. I'm looking at it right now. It's definitely not dead. All right. But it's your project. If it doesn't work out, you're responsible for finding it a proper home." Maya grinned. "Understood. I'll arrange transport back to the ship." She ended the call and turned back to the merchant. "We have a deal." As she transferred the credits and filed the necessary paperwork, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a decision that would change everything. The creature continued to watch her with those intelligent eyes, and she could swear she saw something like gratitude in their depths. "What should I call you?" she asked as the transport cage arrived. The creature made that same purring whimper, but this time Maya thought she heard a pattern in it. Something that sounded almost like music. "I'll figure out your real name later," she promised. "For now, how about Symphony? You sound like you're trying to sing." The creature's eyes seemed to brighten, and for the first time since Maya had seen it, it tried to stand. Its legs were shaky, but it managed to get to its feet with dignity intact. As Maya watched Symphony being loaded into the transport cage, she wondered what she had gotten herself into. The creature was clearly more than it appeared to be, but whether that was a good thing or a dangerous thing remained to be seen. One thing was certain: her life was about to become much more interesting. The transport back to the research vessel Endeavor took 20 minutes, but Maya spent every second of it watching Symphony through the cage's transparent walls. The creature had curled up during the journey, but its eyes remained alert, tracking every movement and sound. When other passengers glanced at the cage with disgust or fear, Symphony seemed to shrink further into itself. "Don't listen to them," Maya whispered. "They just don't understand." The Endeavor was a mid-sized research ship with facilities for studying everything from mineral samples to living ecosystems. Maya's quarters were in the junior staff section, but she had been given access to one of the auxiliary biology labs for her projects. It wasn't much, just a small room with basic life support systems and monitoring equipment, but it would have to do. Dr. Voss was waiting when Maya arrived with Symphony's cage. The older woman had dedicated her life to studying alien life forms, and her weathered face showed the strain of decades spent in artificial gravity and recycled air. She peered at Symphony with the critical eye of someone who had seen thousands of species. "Interesting," she murmured, running a scanner over the cage. "The life signs are stronger than I expected for a supposedly dying animal." "That's what I thought too," Maya said, carefully opening the cage door. "Symphony, this is Dr. Voss. She's going to help me take care of you." Symphony emerged slowly, its legs still shaky but stronger than they had been at the marketplace. It looked around the lab with obvious curiosity, its large eyes taking in every detail. When its gaze settled on Dr. Voss, the creature made a soft sound that was almost like a question. "Symphony?" Dr. Voss raised an eyebrow. "It makes musical sounds," Maya explained, "and everyone else was treating it like noise, so I thought, it's as good a name as any. Let's see what we're dealing with." The initial examination revealed several surprising facts. Symphony's temperature was elevated, but not in a way that suggested fever. Its heart rate was rapid but steady. Most interesting of all, the patches where new scales were growing showed signs of bioelectric activity that the scanner couldn't fully identify. "This isn't disease," Dr. Voss said after reviewing the readings. "This is metamorphosis, like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, something like that. But I've never seen anything quite like this before." Dr. Voss looked at Symphony with new interest. "Quellens are supposed to be stable throughout their adult lives. They don't undergo physical changes like this." Symphony had been exploring the lab while they talked, always staying close enough to Maya to return to her side if needed. It had shown particular interest in the various monitoring devices, studying them with what seemed like scientific curiosity rather than animal instinct. "Look at this," Maya said, watching Symphony examine a spectral analyzer. "It's not just looking at the machine. It's trying to understand how it works." Dr. Voss moved closer to observe. Symphony noticed her approach and made a series of soft sounds, not the musical tones Maya had heard before, but something more complex. The universal translator beeped and displayed a partial pattern match. "Greeting our question. Trust?" the device offered uncertainly. "It's trying to communicate. Dr. Voss breathed. Maya, this creature may be more intelligent than we thought. Over the next few hours, they set up a proper habitat for Symphony in the corner of the lab. The creature watched everything they did with obvious interest, occasionally making sounds that the translator struggled to interpret. When Maya brought food, a mixture of proteins and minerals that the computer recommended for Quellan nutrition, Symphony sniffed it carefully before eating. Cautious, but not afraid, Dr. Voss noted. It trusts you enough to eat, but it's still evaluating everything else. That night, Maya stayed in the lab to monitor Symphony's condition. She had set up a small cot near the creature's habitat, ostensibly to watch for any medical emergencies, but really because she couldn't bear the thought of leaving Symphony alone in a strange place. Around midnight, she was awakened by a soft sound. Symphony was standing at the edge of its habitat, looking directly at her. In the dim light of the emergency systems, its scales seemed to glow with a faint inner light. Can't sleep either? Maya asked quietly. Symphony approached slowly, moving with more grace than it had shown earlier. When it reached Maya's cot, it sat down and began to make those musical sounds again. But this time, Maya could hear the complexity in them. It wasn't random noise. It was a song with melody, rhythm, and emotional content that spoke of loneliness and hope. Maya found herself humming along, matching the creature's pitch and rhythm. Symphony's eyes widened and its song became more elaborate, weaving harmonies around Maya's simple melody. They continued like this for almost an hour, creating music together in the darkened lab. When the song finally ended, Symphony curled up on the floor next to Maya's cot, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from its changing scales. For the first time since she had found it, the creature seemed truly at peace. The next morning brought new discoveries. Dr. Voss arrived to find Maya and Symphony working together on what appeared to be a puzzle. Maya had scattered some of the lab's portable instruments on the floor, and Symphony was organizing them into complex patterns. "What are you doing?" Dr. Voss asked. "Symphony started arranging them while I was getting breakfast," Maya explained. "I think it's trying to show us something." Dr. Voss studied the pattern Symphony had created. The instruments were arranged in a way that created specific electromagnetic field interactions. Nothing dangerous, but definitely intentional. "It understands our technology well enough to manipulate it," Dr. Voss said slowly. "Maya, I don't think this is a simple animal. I think we're dealing with a sapient being. The revelation changed everything. If Symphony was truly intelligent, then everything they thought they knew about Quellans was wrong. More importantly, it meant that Symphony's previous owner had essentially abandoned a person, not a pet." "Is that why no one wanted you?" Maya asked, kneeling beside Symphony. "Because you're too smart for them to understand?" Symphony looked up at her and made a sound that the translator rendered as, "Yes, different, alone." Maya felt her heart break a little. Symphony hadn't just been sick and abandoned. It had been isolated, unable to communicate its intelligence to beings who saw it only as a beast. The loneliness must have been unbearable. "You're not alone anymore," Maya promised. "We're going to figure this out together." Dr. Voss was already pulling up everything the database contained about Quellan biology and behavior. If Symphony is representative of its species' true capabilities, then we've been underestimating them for decades. This could revolutionize our understanding of alien intelligence. But Maya wasn't thinking about scientific breakthroughs. She was thinking about the trust in Symphony's eyes, the beauty of their midnight duet, and the way the creature had organized the instruments not just to demonstrate its intelligence, but to communicate its loneliness. Symphony needed more than scientific study. It needed friendship, understanding, and a chance to show what it was truly capable of. Maya was determined to give it all three. As the day progressed, Symphony continued to surprise them. It learned to operate the lab's basic computer interface within hours. It showed Maya how to modify the atmospheric processors to create more comfortable humidity levels. Most remarkably, it began to teach them its language through a combination of sounds, gestures, and electromagnetic patterns. By evening, they had established basic communication. Symphony could express concepts like hunger, curiosity, gratitude, and affection, but Maya sensed there was much more it wanted to say. Complex thoughts and feelings that their limited shared vocabulary couldn't yet convey. "This is just the beginning," Dr. Voss said as she prepared to leave for the night. "Symphony may be the key to understanding an entire species we've completely misjudged." Maya nodded, but she was already thinking beyond scientific implications. Symphony was becoming a friend, and friends deserved more than study. They deserved adventure, purpose, and the chance to shine. She had no idea that Symphony's true abilities would soon be tested in ways that would change not just their understanding of Quellan intelligence, but the fate of everyone aboard the Endeavor. Time jolting Maya from sleep in her quarters. She had been dreaming of singing with Symphony in a vast crystalline chamber, their voices creating patterns of light that danced through the air. The harsh reality of klaxons and flashing red lights felt like falling from a great height. All hands to emergency stations. Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. We have a critical situation in the engine room. This is not a drill. Maya ran through the corridors toward the biology lab, knowing that Symphony would be frightened by the alarms. She found the creature standing calmly in the center of the lab, its scales glowing with a soft phosphorescence she had never seen before. Maya, Symphony said as soon as she entered. There is great danger. The ship's heart is sick. Heart? You mean the reactor? Yes. Symphony can feel it through the ship's electromagnetic field. The patterns are wrong, growing worse. Many people will die if it cannot be fixed. Dr. Voss burst into the lab, her hair disheveled and her face pale. Maya, we need to evacuate to the emergency pods. There's been a cascade failure in the fusion reactor's containment system. The engineers say we have maybe 20 minutes before it goes critical. Maya looked at Symphony, whose scales were now pulsing in rhythm with what she suddenly realized were the ship's systems. Symphony, can you help? Can you see what's wrong? Symphony moved to the lab's computer terminal and placed its claws on the interface. The screen immediately filled with diagnostic information that scrolled past faster than any human could read. Yes, Symphony said after a moment. The problem is clear now. The electromagnetic governors that control the fusion reaction are misaligned. Small error, but growing exponentially. Can the engineers fix it? Dr. Voss asked. Not in time, Symphony replied. The misalignment is in a place humans cannot reach safely. Too much radiation. But Symphony can see the pattern, can reach through the ship's electrical systems to correct it. Maya understood immediately. You want to interface directly with the ship's computer core. More than that, Symphony said, its voice taking on an urgency she had never heard before. Symphony must become part of the ship temporarily, extend consciousness through all systems to reach the damaged area. But it's dangerous. The electromagnetic fields around the reactor could disrupt Symphony's neural patterns permanently. There has to be another way, Maya said. But even as she spoke, she could feel Symphony's determination through their growing bond. The creature had made its decision. There is no other way, Symphony said gently. This is why the changes happened. Why Symphony met Maya. This moment, this choice, it was always meant to be. Captain Rodriguez arrived in the lab just as Symphony was explaining what it planned to do. Absolutely not, she said firmly. I won't risk a sapient being's life, no matter how dire the situation. Captain, Symphony said, looking directly at her. How many Quellans did you save 15 years ago? 43, the captain replied without hesitation. And how many people are on this ship now? 217. If Symphony dies saving them, the trade is still favorable, Symphony said with what sounded almost like humor. But Symphony does not plan to die. Maya has given strength, shown what friendship means. Symphony is more than it was before. Maya felt tears running down her face, though she wasn't sure when she had started crying. Through their bond, she could sense Symphony's emotions, determination, fear, hope, and an overwhelming sense of love for the beings it was about to risk everything to save. I'm going with you, Maya said suddenly. No, Dr. Voss and Captain Rodriguez said simultaneously. Yes, Symphony said, its eyes brightening. The bond will help. Maya's presence will anchor Symphony, provide strength to maintain consciousness through the interface. It's too dangerous, Dr. Voss protested. We don't know what kind of neural feedback you might experience. We don't have time to debate, Maya said, feeling the ship shudder as the reactor grew more unstable. Symphony needs help, and I'm the only one who can provide it. Captain Rodriguez looked between them, her command training warring with her protective instincts. Finally, she nodded grimly. What do you need? Symphony moved quickly to the lab's main computer interface, direct connection to the ship's central processing core, and Maya must maintain physical contact throughout the procedure. Dr. Voss worked frantically to establish the connection, while Maya positioned herself next to Symphony. When she placed her hand on the creature's flank, she immediately felt the electromagnetic storm of activity within its nervous system. Symphony's abilities were far beyond what they had previously witnessed. Connection established, Dr. Voss announced. But the power requirements are enormous. The lab's systems weren't designed for this kind of interface. Then we'll give it more power, Captain Rodriguez said, opening a communication channel. Engineering. Reroute all non-essential power to Biology Lab 3. Priority Alpha authorization. Symphony placed all 6 of its appendages on the interface and closed its eyes. Maya felt the moment when its consciousness expanded beyond its physical form, flowing through the ship's electronic nervous system like water finding its course. Through their bond, she could sense what Symphony was experiencing: the overwhelming complexity of the ship's systems, the growing chaos around the damaged reactor, the precise calculations needed to correct the misalignment. But the electromagnetic interference was brutal. Maya felt Symphony's consciousness fracturing under the assault, pieces of its awareness scattering through the ship's systems. Without thinking, she deepened their connection, using her own mental stability as an anchor point for Symphony's expanding consciousness. The sensation was indescribable. Maya found herself simultaneously existing in her own body and spread throughout the ship's systems. She could feel the reactor's tortured fusion reactions, see the precise points where the containment field was failing, understand the elegant solution that Symphony was implementing 1-minute adjustment at a time. But the effort was taking a terrible toll. Symphony's physical form was convulsing, its scales flickering between silver and black as its nervous system struggled to maintain the connection. Maya poured her own strength into their bond, offering everything she had to keep Symphony anchored. Critical failure in Containment Field 7, the ship's computer announced. Reactor breach in 60 seconds. Through the interface, Maya felt Symphony make one final desperate adjustment to the reactor's control systems. The change was so small that no human engineer would have thought to attempt it, but it created a cascade of corrections that began to stabilize the entire system. Containment field stabilizing, the computer announced. Reactor temperature returning to normal parameters. Symphony collapsed, its consciousness snapping back into its physical form with traumatic force. Maya, still connected through their bond, felt the psychic shock and nearly blacked out herself. For a terrifying moment, she couldn't tell if Symphony was still alive. Then she felt it, a weak but steady pulse of consciousness, battered but intact. Symphony's eyes opened slowly, focusing on Maya's face with obvious effort. "Did it work?" Symphony whispered. "The reactor's stable," Captain Rodriguez reported, her voice filled with awe. "You did it. You saved everyone on the ship." Dr. Voss was running medical scanners over both Maya and Symphony. Severe neural exhaustion in both subjects, but no permanent damage detected. "Maya, how do you feel?" Maya considered the question carefully. She felt different, more aware of the electromagnetic patterns around her, more sensitive to the emotional states of everyone in the room, more connected to Symphony than ever before. "Changed," she said finally, "but in a good way." Symphony struggled to sit up, its movements still shaky from the ordeal. "The bond is stronger now," it said, looking at Maya with something approaching wonder. Symphony can feel Maya's thoughts more clearly, and Maya can sense Symphony's emotions directly. "Is that permanent?" Dr. Voss asked, though her tone suggested she was more fascinated than concerned. "Unknown," Symphony replied. "No Quellan has ever formed a bond this deep with a human before. Maya and Symphony are exploring uncharted territory." Captain Rodriguez looked at the two of them with an expression that mixed admiration with concern. "What you did today was extraordinary. But it also demonstrates just how much we don't understand about Quellan capabilities. If other Quellans have similar abilities, then the galaxy is going to change dramatically when the truth comes out." Maya finished. "Symphony, are all your people capable of what you just did?" "Not all," Symphony replied thoughtfully. "But many could be, given the right circumstances and emotional bonds. Quellans were never meant to live in isolation. We grow stronger through connection, more capable through trust." Maya understood the implications immediately. If Quellans could form bonds like hers with Symphony, if they could interface with technology in ways that humans couldn't even imagine, then they weren't just an enslaved species. They were potentially the most valuable partners in the galaxy. but they were also potentially the most dangerous, if those bonds were forged with the wrong intentions. We need to be very careful about how we reveal this information, Captain Rodriguez said, echoing Maya's thoughts. Symphony, are there others of your people who might be willing to help us contact the scattered Quellan populations? Ship faster than any official announcement could have traveled. Within hours, crew members who had previously regarded the creature with curiosity or mild interest were looking at it with something approaching reverence. Maya found herself fielding requests from engineers who wanted to understand how Symphony had interfaced with the ship's systems, from communications officers who hoped Symphony could help optimize their equipment, and from medical staff who wondered if Quellan abilities might revolutionize treatment techniques, but not all the attention was positive. Maya was reviewing Symphony's medical data 3 days after the reactor incident when Lieutenant Commander Walsh entered the biology lab unannounced. Walsh was the ship's security chief, a stern man whose distrust of non-humans was well known throughout the crew. "Ms. Chen," he said formally, his eyes fixed on Symphony, who was resting in the corner of the lab. "I need to speak with you about the security implications of your partnership." "Symphony saved everyone on this ship," Maya replied, not bothering to hide her irritation. "What security implications could there possibly be?" "The ability to take control of ship systems remotely," Walsh said bluntly. "What happens if this creature decides our interests don't align with its own? What happens if there are other Quellans who don't share its apparent good intentions?" Symphony raised its head at the mention of its name, its scales shifting to a darker shade that Maya had learned indicated either illness or distress. Through their bond, she could feel Symphony's hurt at being referred to as this creature, and it. "Symphony is not an it," Maya said firmly. "Symphony is a person with a name, feelings, and the same rights as any other sapient being aboard this ship." "That remains to be determined," Walsh replied. "Until we know more about Quellan capabilities and intentions, I'm recommending that all interactions with the specimen be monitored and restricted." The word specimen hit Symphony like a physical blow. Maya felt the creature's pain through their bond and found herself standing protectively in front of it. "Absolutely not. Symphony is a member of this crew now, not a laboratory subject." "That's not your decision to make," Walsh said coldly. "Captain Rodriguez has agreed to a security review of the situation." Maya felt her heart sink. She had thought that Symphony's heroic actions would have eliminated any doubt about its character and intentions. The idea that people were still questioning Symphony's right to be treated as a person felt like a betrayal of everything they had accomplished together. Dr. Voss arrived just as the conversation was reaching a heated crescendo. "What's going on here?" she demanded, taking in the tense body language of everyone in the room. "Lieutenant, Commander Walsh wants to treat Symphony like a prisoner," Maya said angrily. "I want to treat it like the potential security threat it represents," Walsh corrected. "We know nothing about Quellan psychology, social structures, or long-term goals. For all we know, saving the ship was part of some larger plan." "That's enough," Dr. Voss said sharply. "Symphony, how do you feel about these accusations?" Symphony's response was quiet but clear, sad, frightened. Symphony saved human lives because life is precious, not because of plans or schemes. If humans cannot trust Symphony after such proof of good intentions, then perhaps Symphony has misunderstood what friendship means. The creature's obvious pain made even Walsh look uncomfortable, but he didn't back down. Emotional manipulation is a known tactic among intelligent species. The fact that it can influence human feelings through some kind of mental link only makes it more dangerous. "The bond isn't manipulation," Maya protested. "It's based on mutual trust and shared experiences. Symphony can't control my thoughts or emotions, we share them." "How can you be certain?" Walsh pressed. "How do you know your feelings are your own anymore?" The question hit Maya like ice water. Through the bond, she felt Symphony's shock and horror at the implication. But Walsh's words also raised doubts that Maya had been trying to suppress. How much of her growing attachment to Symphony was natural friendship, and how much might be influenced by their psychic connection? Symphony seemed to sense her uncertainty and slowly approached, moving with careful deliberation. "Maya," it said softly, "the bond only shares what is already there. It cannot create feelings that do not exist. Symphony cannot make Maya care, can only show that Symphony cares in return." "But how can we be sure?" Maya asked, hating herself for voicing the doubt but needing to hear the answer. Because Maya cared before the bond deepened, Symphony replied simply. Maya chose to help sick creature in marketplace before knowing about Quellan intelligence. Maya stayed with Symphony through fear and uncertainty, because Maya's heart is kind. Not because of any influence from Symphony. Dr. Voss had been quietly recording the conversation, her expression thoughtful. Symphony, would you be willing to undergo psychological evaluation to demonstrate your mental stability and intentions? If it would help humans trust Symphony, yes, the creature replied without hesitation. And would you consent to temporary bond suppression so that Maya can evaluate her own feelings without psychic influence? Maya felt Symphony's spike of fear through the bond. The idea of being separated from their connection was clearly terrifying to the creature. But after a moment, Symphony nodded. If Maya wishes it, Symphony will endure separation. Maya looked at Symphony's brave but frightened face and felt her doubts evaporate. No, she said firmly. I don't need the bond suppressed to know how I feel. I cared about Symphony before I even knew it was intelligent, before there was any bond between us. That hasn't changed. Walsh looked frustrated. You're being emotionally compromised by an alien influence. You can't make rational decisions about Lieutenant Commander. Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through the argument as she entered the lab. I believe that's enough. Maya had never been so happy to see the captain. Rodriguez looked around the room, taking in the tension and Symphony's obvious distress. I've been monitoring this conversation through the security feeds. Walsh, you're out of line. Captain, I'm only trying to protect the ship and crew. By traumatizing a being who just saved all our lives. Rodriguez's voice was dangerously quiet. Symphony, I apologize for this treatment. You deserve better from us. Symphony's scales brightened slightly at the captain's words. Captain Rodriguez understands. Symphony is grateful. What I understand, Rodriguez continued, is that Symphony has proven its character through actions, not words. The bond between Maya and Symphony may be unusual, but it's also produced results that benefit everyone aboard this ship. She turned to Walsh with an expression that made the security chief step back. I've reviewed the sensor data from the reactor incident. Symphony's intervention was precise, elegant, and completely focused on saving lives. There was no evidence of any agenda beyond protecting the crew. But the potential for abuse, Walsh began, exists with any powerful technology, Rodriguez cut him off. We don't restrict our engineers from accessing ship systems just because they could theoretically sabotage them. We trust them based on their demonstrated character and intentions. Maya felt a wave of relief, both her own and Symphony's shared through their bond. But the captain wasn't finished. However, Rodriguez continued, Walsh does raise some valid concerns about the broader implications of Quellan abilities. We need to understand more about your people, Symphony, before we make contact with the larger galaxy. Symphony will answer any questions, the creature replied immediately. Want humans to understand Quellans are not threats. Good. Dr. Voss, I want a comprehensive study of Symphony's abilities and psychology. Maya, you'll assist as Symphony's liaison and translator. Walsh, you'll observe and document everything from a security perspective. But Symphony is to be treated as an honored guest, not a prisoner. Walsh looked like he wanted to protest, but the captain's tone made it clear the decision was final. Yes, ma'am. As the others left, Maya remained with Symphony in the lab. The creature was trembling slightly, the after effects of stress and emotional turmoil. Maya sat beside it and gently placed her hand on its flank, feeling the warmth of its living metal scales. I'm sorry, she said softly. I should have defended you better. Maya did defend Symphony, the creature replied. But Maya also had doubts. That is natural and healthy. Blind trust is not true friendship. Through their bond, Maya could feel Symphony's forgiveness and understanding, but also its lingering hurt. The accusations had wounded the creature more deeply than it was willing to admit. Symphony, Maya said carefully. Walsh was wrong to treat you like a threat, but some of his questions weren't entirely unreasonable. What are we going to do when other people find out about Quellan abilities? How do we convince them that you're not dangerous? Symphony was quiet for a long time, its scales cycling through subtle color changes as it considered the question. Finally it spoke. By being what Symphony has always been. By helping, healing, protecting. By showing that strength used wisely creates trust, not fear. And if that's not enough, if people are too afraid or prejudiced to listen, Symphony's response carried a sadness that made Maya's chest tighten. Then Symphony and others like Symphony will remain hidden, pretending to be animals to avoid persecution. But Maya has shown Symphony that some humans can see beyond fear. Plea for help that reached the Endeavor. Just as they were completing their planned survey mission, Maya was in the lab with Symphony, conducting another round of cognitive tests for Dr. Voss's research, when Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have an emergency situation. Maya and Symphony exchanged glances. Over the past week, Symphony had become increasingly agitated. Its scales flickering between colors and patterns that Maya had learned indicated deep concern. When she asked about it, Symphony could only say that something felt wrong in the electromagnetic spectrum around them. Should we go? Maya asked. Symphony thinks yes, the creature replied, standing gracefully. The wrongness Symphony has been feeling. It may be connected to this emergency. They arrived on the bridge to find controlled chaos. Officers were manning stations that rarely saw use, and the main display showed star charts with trajectory calculations scrolling past at dangerous speeds. Report, Captain Rodriguez demanded as Dr. Voss and Lieutenant Commander Walsh arrived behind Maya and Symphony. Distress signal from a civilian transport in the Kepler 442 system, reported the communications officer. The ship is the New Horizon, carrying approximately 800 passengers and crew. They're reporting catastrophic engine failure and requesting immediate assistance. Why, how far? Rodriguez asked. 18 hours at maximum acceleration, the navigation officer replied. But Captain, there's more. The New Horizon is carrying evacuees from the Centauri colonies. They're fleeing some kind of plague outbreak. Maya felt Symphony stiffen beside her. Through their bond, she sensed a spike of recognition and fear that had nothing to do with the ship's emergency. What kind of plague? Dr. Voss asked. Unknown pathogen. Reports are fragmentary, but it seems to affect neural function in most humanoid species. Victims become catatonic within hours of exposure. Symphony made a sound that Maya had never heard before, a low, keening wail that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull. Every head on the bridge turned toward the creature. Symphony, what is it? Maya asked urgently. Neural plague, Symphony said, its voice filled with a terror that chilled everyone present. Not natural, artificial, created by those who hunt Quellans. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Lieutenant Commander Walsh was the first to speak. What do you mean, created? Symphony's scales had gone completely black, a color Maya had never seen before. Some humans know truth about Quellans. Not scientists or explorers. Bad humans. They capture Quellans, study abilities, try to create weapons from Quellan neural patterns. That's impossible, Dr. Voss said, but her voice lacked conviction. Neural plague targets specific brainwave patterns, Symphony continued. Its distress obvious. Makes victims susceptible to external control. Those who created it can control infected minds like puppets. But plague has flaw. Affects all neural activity, including what makes higher thought possible. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward in her command chair. Are you saying this plague is a biological weapon designed to enslave people? Yes, and Symphony fears it may be testing ground for something worse. Maya felt sick as the implications sank in. You think they're planning to use it on Quellans? On everyone, Symphony replied. Quellans first because we bond easily with other minds, but if successful, could be modified to work on any sapient species. Walsh, who had been silent during this exchange, stepped forward. How do you know all this? How can you be certain about the plague's origin? Symphony turned to face him directly, because Symphony has encountered it before. Was captured by weapon makers 3 years ago. Escaped before full testing but saw what they were creating. Saw other Quellans die from early versions of plague. The revelation hit the bridge like a physical blow. Maya understood now why Symphony had been alone and sick when she found it. It hadn't just been abandoned by an owner. It had been a refugee fleeing from something far worse than simple slavery. We have to help the New Horizon, Maya said firmly. 800 people are going to die if we don't. Agreed, Rodriguez said immediately. But if Symphony is right about the plague's nature, this could be a trap. They may be expecting someone to respond to the distress call. Symphony can help, the creature said suddenly. Neural plague affects normal brains, but bonded consciousness may be immune. Symphony and Maya together could resist infection, help others. Walsh looked skeptical. Even if that's true, how could you possibly treat 800 infected people? Symphony's response surprised everyone. By forming emergency bonds, temporary connections that protect consciousness from plague effects. Symphony has never tried with so many before, but with Maya as anchor, may be possible. Maya felt Symphony's fear through their bond, but also its determination. You're talking about risking your life again. Yes, but also saving many lives. This is what bonded pair was meant to do. Dr. Voss was frantically pulling up data on her tablet. The theoretical framework is sound. If the plague works by disrupting normal neural patterns, a sufficiently strong psychic field might protect nearby minds from infection. How close would Symphony need to be to the infected people? Rodriguez asked. Direct contact would be safest, Symphony replied. But an emergency could protect entire ship section if Maya maintained connection. The captain made her decision with characteristic speed. We're going to help. Dr. Voss, I want every piece of medical and technical equipment that might be useful loaded into the shuttle bay. Walsh, prepare an away team with full biological containment suits. Captain, Walsh said carefully, are we sure we can trust Symphony's assessment of the situation? This could still be some kind of elaborate deception. Before anyone could answer, Symphony did something unexpected. It approached Walsh directly, moving slowly to avoid appearing threatening. When it was close enough to touch him, it stopped and looked directly into his eyes. Lieutenant Commander Walsh, Symphony said formally, you have been right to question Symphony's motives and abilities. Protection of crew is your duty, and Symphony respects that duty. Walsh blinked, clearly not expecting such a diplomatic response. But now Symphony asks for trust, the creature continued, not because Symphony claims to be good, but because innocent people will die without help. Symphony offers to submit to any monitoring, any restraints Walsh considers necessary if it means saving those lives. The security chief stared at Symphony for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded slowly. I'll prepare restraint protocols, but I hope we won't need them. It was as close to an apology as Walsh was likely to offer, and Symphony accepted it with gracious dignity. 6 hours later, the Endeavour dropped out of hyperspace near the New Horizon. The civilian transport was drifting powerless, its hull scarred by what looked like weapons fire. Maya stood in the shuttle bay with Symphony, both of them wearing modified containment suits that allowed for physical contact while protecting them from airborne pathogens. Remember, Dr. Voss said through the comm system, if you start to feel any symptoms at all, abort immediately. We can't risk losing our only protection against this plague. Maya nodded, though her attention was focused on Symphony. The creature's scales were cycling through rapid color changes, and she could feel its anxiety through their bond. What is it? She asked quietly. Ship feels wrong, Symphony replied. Too quiet. 800 people should make more electromagnetic noise even if unconscious. As their shuttle approached the New Horizons docking bay, Maya began to understand what Symphony meant. The ship felt dead in a way that went beyond simple power failure. There was an absence that made her skin crawl. They docked successfully, and the away team moved into the transport's corridors. The sight that greeted them was worse than anything Maya had imagined. People lay where they had fallen, their eyes open but empty. They were breathing but showed no response to external stimuli. Over here, called one of the medical technicians. I've found crew members who are still conscious. Maya and Symphony hurried to where a small group of the New Horizons officers had barricaded themselves in the bridge. They were conscious but clearly terrified, and their leader, a middle-aged woman with captain's stripes, looked at Symphony with obvious suspicion. What is that thing? She demanded. Our best hope for helping your people, Maya replied. Symphony, can you sense the plague's effects? Symphony approached the nearest unconscious passenger and placed a claw gently on their forehead. The response was immediate. Symphony's scales flared bright silver and the unconscious person's eyes focused for the first time in hours. It works, Dr. Voss said excitedly through the comm. The psychic field is counteracting the plague's neural disruption. But Symphony was already moving to the next victim, and Maya could feel the strain through their bond. Each healing took something out of the creature, and there were hundreds more people to help. Symphony can't heal them all individually, Maya realized. It's too much. Then we try the mass protection field, Symphony said, its voice already showing signs of exhaustion. Maya, hold tight to our bond. Symphony is going to extend consciousness through entire ship. Maya gripped Symphony's claw as the creature closed its eyes and reached out with its mind. She felt their shared. The thing that emerged from the New Horizons cargo hold was a nightmare fusion of technology and biology. It moved on mechanical legs that clicked against the deck plating, while its upper body writhed with organic tendrils that pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. What had once been a Quellan was now something twisted into a living weapon, its original consciousness buried beneath layers of artificial programming. Maya felt Symphony's horror and recognition through their bond. Kethvalan, Symphony whispered, the name carrying tones of grief and rage. Was friend, family. The weapon makers took Kethvalan 2 years ago. The corrupted Quellan turned its attention toward them, and Maya could feel the waves of neural disruption it was broadcasting. This was the source of the plague, not a simple disease, but a living transmitter that could override conscious thought and replace it with artificial commands. Maya, Symphony said urgently, must break connection now. Kethvalan's pattern will overwhelm Symphony if bonds remain active. No, Maya said firmly, tightening her grip on Symphony's claw. We face this together. Around them, the passengers they had just awakened were beginning to succumb again as Kethvalan's presence intensified the plague's effects. But worse than that, Maya could feel the corrupted Quellan probing their shared consciousness, trying to find a way to turn their bond into another vector for control. Lieutenant Commander Walsh and his security team arrived just as Kethvalan began to advance toward them. What is that thing? Walsh demanded, raising his weapon. Quellan, who was captured and modified, Symphony replied, never taking its eyes off the approaching horror. Weapons will not help. Kethvalan's body is too altered, and destruction would only release plague in concentrated form. Then what do we do? Maya asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Symphony's scales began to brighten, shifting from silver to gold to something that seemed to contain starlight. Symphony must reach what remains of Kethvalan's original mind. Must break artificial programming and restore true consciousness. Can you do that without losing yourself? Dr. Voss asked through the comm system. Unknown, Symphony admitted, but attempting is only choice. Maya, Symphony needs all your strength for this. Must trust completely. Maya felt the familiar expansion of their shared consciousness, but this time it was different. Instead of reaching out to heal and protect, Symphony was diving deep into the corrupted neural patterns of their former friend. The sensation was like plunging into acid. Maya felt the artificial programming trying to tear their bond apart, replace their thoughts with commands from unknown masters. But Symphony pressed on, using their connection as an anchor, while searching for any trace of Kethvalan's original personality. The corrupted Quellan fought back, its mechanical appendages lashing out while waves of neural static tried to overwhelm their combined consciousness. Through the bond, Maya experienced Symphony's memories of Kethvalan, a gentle being who had loved music and mathematics, who had cared for injured creatures who had never hurt anyone. That person was still there, buried beneath the artificial modifications, screaming silently for release. I can feel them, Maya gasped, the strain of maintaining the connection making her dizzy. Kethvalan is still in there, trapped but alive. Symphony's response was a surge of determination so powerful that it nearly overwhelmed Maya's consciousness. The creature began to sing, not the simple melodies Maya had heard before, but something complex and profound that seemed to contain the mathematical principles underlying reality itself. The song reached Kethvalan's buried consciousness like a key turning in a lock. For a moment, the corrupted Quellan stopped its advance, its mechanical components fighting against organic impulses as two sets of programming warred for control. It's working, Walsh said in amazement. The thing is fighting itself. But the artificial programming wasn't going to give up easily. Maya felt it surge back, trying to use Symphony's connection to spread into their shared consciousness. If it succeeded, both Symphony and Maya would become vectors for the plague, spreading the neural weapon to everyone they tried to help. Symphony, you have to let go, Maya said desperately. It's too strong. No, Symphony replied with absolute certainty. Kethvalan suffered alone for 2 years. Will not abandon family now. Instead of retreating, Symphony opened their bond wider, inviting Maya to share not just consciousness, but the fundamental essence of what made them who they were. Maya felt herself merging with Symphony in ways that transcended individual identity, becoming something new and greater than either could be alone. Together, they reached into Kethvalin's corrupted mind and began to carefully separate the artificial programming from the original consciousness. It was delicate work, like performing surgery on a living soul, but their combined awareness could perceive patterns that neither could have understood alone. The artificial systems fought back with increasing desperation, but they had been designed to control individuals, not the Gestalt consciousness that Maya and Symphony had become. Piece by piece, command by command, they stripped away the artificial programming until only Kethvalin's true self remained. The corrupted Quellan collapsed, its mechanical components shutting down as the organic portions were freed from artificial control. For a terrible moment, Maya thought they had been too late, that Kethvalin's consciousness had been too damaged to survive. Then Kethvalin's eyes opened, clear and aware for the first time in 2 years. "Symphony?" the rescued Quellan whispered. "Is it really you?" "Yes, family," Symphony replied, moving to comfort their friend. "You are safe now." Around them, the plague's effects were rapidly fading as the primary transmission source was neutralized. Passengers throughout the ship were waking up, their consciousness restored to normal function. But Maya barely noticed because she was experiencing something unprecedented. She was still bonded with Symphony, but their consciousness remained distinct. Instead of merging into a single entity, they had found a way to share awareness while maintaining individual identity. It was a level of partnership that opened possibilities neither had imagined. Dr. Voss was scanning all 3 of them frantically. The neural patterns are stabilizing. Kethvalin shows signs of trauma but no permanent damage. And Maya, Symphony, your bond has reached a state I've never seen before. What does that mean? Walsh asked, though his tone was curious rather than suspicious. Maya looked at Symphony, then at Kethvalin, and felt a certainty that came from their shared awareness. It means we can do more than just help individual Quellans. We can teach others how to form these bonds safely, how to resist neural weapons, how to work together across species barriers. The weapon makers sought to control through force, Symphony added, but true strength comes from willing partnership. Maya and Symphony have shown that such bonds cannot be corrupted or commanded. Kethvalin struggled to sit up, still weak from their ordeal.
"There are others," they said urgently.
Dozens of Quellans in the weapon makers' laboratories, and they are planning something larger, a transmission array that could spread the neural plague across entire star systems. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the comm with grim determination. "Then we stop them. Symphony, Kethvalin, are you willing to help us locate these facilities?" "Yes," both Quellans replied simultaneously. Maya felt a surge of purpose through her bond with Symphony. They had started this journey trying to save one sick creature in a marketplace. Now they were part of something that could reshape the galaxy's understanding of intelligence, partnership, and the true meaning of strength. Lieutenant Commander Walsh approached them as the medical teams took charge of the rescued passengers. "I owe you an apology," he said to Symphony. "I was wrong to question your motives. You were protecting your people," Symphony replied graciously. "Symphony understands duty, but now you have seen that strongest protection comes from cooperation, not suspicion." As they prepared to return to the Endeavor, Maya reflected on how much had changed since that day on Kepler Station. Symphony was no longer the sick, abandoned creature she had rescued. Instead, Symphony had become exactly what the title had always suggested, a being of incredible strength who had needed only someone to see past surface appearances to recognize its true potential. But the strength hadn't been Symphony's alone. It had emerged from their partnership, from the willingness to trust and support each other even when the risks were enormous. Maya had given Symphony the anchor it needed to develop its abilities, and Symphony had given Maya a purpose that transcended anything she could have achieved alone. The neural plague crisis was over, but their real work was just beginning. They had proven that humans and Quellans could form partnerships that benefited both species. Now they needed to convince the galaxy that such cooperation was not only possible but essential for the future. Dr. Voss was already planning research projects that would revolutionize xenobiology. Captain Rodriguez was coordinating with Fleet Command to organize rescue operations for enslaved Kellans. Even Walsh was working on protocols for integrating Quellan abilities into ship security systems. But Maya's thoughts were focused on something simpler and more profound. She looked at Symphony, whose scales now held a permanent golden tinge that marked,